Well, the UK is facing its longest recession, apparently, and the Conservative leadership hopefuls Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak clashed over economic policies to tackle the forecasted downturn.
Well, Ms Truss and Mr Sunak took part in Sky News' The Battle for Number 10 on Thursday night, which saw them separately taking questions from party members.
The Foreign Secretary argued that recession could be avoided using tax cuts and reversing national insurance increases. Meanwhile, the former Chancellor warned that Liz Truss's plan would make the dire economic situation worse. Let's have a look at some of the highlights.
I would immediately reverse the national insurance increase. I would also have a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy to save people money on fuel bills. But I'd also keep corporation tax low to make sure that we are attracting investment into our economy and doing all we can to avoid a recession.
I'm worried that Liz Truss's plans will make the situation worse. And what I want to do is different. I think the government's #1 priority should be grappling with inflation. That's what I want to do. But it all starts with not making the situation worse. Because if we just put fuel on the fire of this inflation spiral, all of us, all of you, are going to just end up with higher mortgage rates, savings and pensions that are eaten away, and misery for millions. I don't want that to happen, and that's why I am so focused on gripping inflation first.
Well, joining us in the studio now is Albi Amankona. He's political commentator and the co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism. Good morning to you, Albi. Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, what was your reaction to that Sky debate last night?
I thought it was a very interesting debate. It seemed to be a good night for Rishi Sunak based upon the audience, because, of course, if you watched the debate, they had some technical issues when it came to them voting for who they thought was going to be the best leader, and then catered it with a simple show of hands. And I think Rishi really took the room, which is in opposition to the polls that we've been seeing at the moment. We've been seeing some polls of Rishi 10, 20, 30 points ahead of Liz Truss. So I was quite surprised to see that result. It was quite a small group of people, I think around 100, 150, whereas the pollsters are polling much larger groups of people. So I'm not sure if it's the turnaround that Rishi needs in order to win this contest.
It's interesting, though. I mean, obviously, the economy is the big issue, and they're approaching it from two very different angles, so it would seem. Yet the economists can't necessarily agree which one is right either.
No, they can't, and that's a very common feature among economists. The economy is in a very dire situation. And I'm actually glad that finally the leaders are being honest about that, because they have to be. The Bank of England has raised interest rates. It is looking like, more likely than not, we're going to have a recession next year, 5 quarters of no growth, of a retracting economy. And what the leadership contenders need to do now is really grapple with the crises that are in our economy, of productivity, of housing, of goods, of labour. And I'm yet to hear any policies that really tackle those supply issues in a meaningful way.
I mean, Rishi Sunak has the economic expertise, obviously the role that he's been doing for the past couple of years. Is this his time to shine now that we have this news from the Bank of England?
It should be his time to shine, but the problem is that he has been connected to the economic disasters of the past 2 years. And to be fair to him, both of them have been out of his control. The COVID crisis was not something he really could have controlled in a meaningful way. The war in Ukraine, which has caused a lot of supply-side issues, is not something he could have controlled in a meaningful way, and he's been reacting to those issues. So Liz Truss seems to have an advantage, because she's saying, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do things differently.
Is his credibility as using, sort of former Chancellor role, is that damaged by the fact that Sajid Javid, who was his old boss when he was Chancellor, has come out and supported Liz Truss and said, Rishi's plans are going to lead to a stagnant economy?
Yes, I think if we look at most of the people that used to work with Rishi in the Treasury, Simon Clarke, Sajid Javid, have actually come out in favour of Liz Truss. So that does damage him to some extent, and he is very much sticking to his original position that now is not the time to be cutting taxes. We need to be focusing on tackling inflation, and then we'll bring down taxes later on, but that doesn't seem to be very popular with the membership.
I just wondered, do you think he believes that? Or has he... I mean, it would be far too big a U-turn. If he changed his position on that, then he's out the race, entirely out the race. So do you think he actually believes what he's saying?
It would have been much easier for Rishi Sunak to come out from the beginning and say that he was going to cut taxes. That would have been the easier political decision to do, because everyone would have known that that would have been popular with the membership. So I would ask, why would he risk losing the leadership election on something he didn't believe in if he didn't really believe in it?
when you talk about growth, I mean, obviously we need growth, and you know the recession is a gloomy picture. Should it come to pass? I mean, whether it would work or not, I don't know. But what Liz Truss is pushing for with tax cuts is to stimulate growth. I mean, that is her plan. His plan is to deal with inflation. Her plan is to stimulate growth.
Yes, but the argument is that the recession is being caused because of a lack of supply, because of inflation. And so the argument would be what we need to do in order to reform the economy is increase supply of goods, of energy, of housing, of labour, in order for the economy to get growing. That is a very fairly understood political economic argument, and that is really what the leadership contenders need to be focusing on. As I said before, we're not really hearing any serious supply-side reforms from either of the candidates.
Albie, we usually see a honeymoon period, don't we, with new leaders? They have a few months where people are saying, you know, give him or her a chance. Do you, well, clearly we're walking into a minefield, whoever this next leader is, with housing, with cost of living crisis, with the economy. Is it going to be a much shorter honeymoon period? Will there even be one at all, do you think?
There might not be a honeymoon period at all, Ellie. You know, we are heading for increases in energy bills come this autumn. We might see interest rates increase again next year. We're going to see 5 quarters of recession until January 2024, we could be in recession. I'm not really sure there's much space for a honeymoon period. The next Prime Minister needs to get down to the nitty-gritty of sorting out the issues with Britain's economy. And there are going to be some difficult decisions to make.
Do you think with all of this, and despite the fact Rishi sort of won over the majority of the studio audience last night, is it going to make any difference? He's, if we believe the polls, trailing 30-plus points behind Liz Truss. He can't make that back, can he?
I think it is difficult to see how Rishi Sunak's team and himself could close such a large gap with Liz Truss. I think what he needs to be doing is focusing on making his arguments and making them well, in the hope that perhaps some of the people that end up in Liz Truss's cabinet might be echoing similar sentiments to her when she is the Prime Minister.
Yeah, well, on the basis that he won't be in the cabinet, I presume.
Well, we don't know who is going to be in the cabinet. They have both said that they would have each other in each other's cabinet, so we have to wait and see what happens with that.
Yeah, interesting. Albie, good to talk to you as always. Thank you very much indeed.